What's an uneasy gut feeling about someone that turned out to be spot on? 1. My sister and I always felt uneasy around our uncle. We didn't like him and tried to avoid him by staying close to our cousins or other family members. This started when we were young, before we understood concepts like sexual abuse or harassment. But we knew our mother had a sad childhood. She was always protective, teaching us which parts of our bodies others shouldn't touch. There's a memory that my sister, my grandmother, and I can't forget. We were playing baseball on an Atari with our cousin when we looked into the hallway and saw our uncle crawling on his hands and knees, gesturing to us. We instantly knew it was wrong and screamed. Our cousin cursed, and our grandmother ran over and hit him. Later, we learned he was a convicted predator who had harmed our mother, our uncle, and many others. Not long after, he was arrested and sent to prison. Our family explained they had always tried to keep us away from him and were relieved we were vigilant, helping lead to his arrest. In prison, he was kept in solitary confinement because other inmates beat him and tried to kill him. But sadly, California released him for good behavior, despite having 39 victims, 2 of whom took their own lives. My mother and 15 other victims fought to keep him locked up, but they failed 3 years ago. He was released and even called our family, asking to stay with us. We berated him harshly, infuriatingly. Our great-grandmother passed away and left him her house and money. Now he has the means to continue his terrible actions. My mother tries to cope with her pain, and we're always there for her. The other victims don't contact us, so we don't know how they're doing. We just hope one day he'll face justice, and the victims will find peace. 2. In middle school grades 7 to 9, my school had a special education program for students with disabilities. One teacher there, also a volleyball coach, made many students feel disgusted. We often called him the pervert. Years later, when I was in high school grades 10-12, he was caught in the school gym engaging in depraved behavior, making a special education student sit on his lap. The incident was reported in the news. The last I heard, he was convicted and sent to prison. 3. Our neighbors had an elderly woman living with them who never left the house and was always working in the kitchen. They said she was their mother or grandmother, staying to help with chores. We believed them, but felt something was off. Every year, they'd leave for a month, leaving her alone in the house, forbidden from going outside. We used to jokingly call her the slave because she never stopped doing housework. But the truth was, they brought her to the US on a 3-month visa, kept her there, and enslaved her in their home for 8 years. Recently, those neighbors were convicted of holding her as a slave for 8 years, along with other charges. 4. My sister's father-in-law, when I met him, I was about 13. He always scared me and wanted me to hug him during family events, and I never wanted to be near him. Years later, I learned he had served time in prison for raping his own daughter when she was young. His wife stayed with him. I do my best to avoid my brother-in-law's family as much as possible. 5. Your story is truly heartbreaking and terrifying. When you were 14, you suspected the man your mother was dating because of his strange behavior insisting on buying you a PC and webcam despite your refusal, sneaking into your room at night, forcing you to sleep with a knife for protection. Your fear turned out to be justified. He wasn't just distributing child pornography, but was planning to produce it himself. And worse, he raped his 9-year-old niece, leading to her having an abortion at 10. You all lived in his sister's house, where his niece also stayed. But you didn't know the truth until your mother and her acquaintances, connected to him, revealed it. Being separated from his niece and moved to another town must have been a painful experience. Your care and persistence in searching for her are truly admirable. If you'd like, I can suggest some safe ways to find information, such as contacting authorities, using social media, or reaching out to organizations that help locate people. Would you like me to look into support resources or assist with something specific based on our previous conversations? I know you're interested in crime cases and stories, so if you want to share more or need a deeper analysis, just let me know. 6. Your story is chilling and shows how accurate human intuition can be. When you met your new neighbor, a brief greeting left you uneasy, though your husband thought you were being unfriendly. Your creeped out feeling was entirely correct. A year later, the horrifying truth came out. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for raping his daughter for years. And his grandson was actually his son. This is terrifying, especially since he lived so close to you. If you want to share more or need me to research vampire ways to identify warning signs from people like him, just let me know. Your intuition was spot on, and this story is a powerful testament to trusting your gut. 7 years ago, when my husband was chatting with a new neighbor, he introduced me to him. I just said hello and went home. My husband said I was a bit rude, but I told him I didn't care because the guy gave me the creeps. A year later, we learned he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for raping his daughter for years, and his grandson was actually his son. My intuition was right. He was truly a terrible person. 8. A friend of mine used to do weird things with other people's drinks, calling it pranks. For example, he'd put pepper in someone's Coke at a restaurant when they went to the bathroom, or even spit in someone's water during a campfire. This started when he was 7, when we first met. Everyone knew to guard their drinks around him because he'd definitely mess with them. But then, a friend caught him trying to put something in a girl's drink, and he got beaten badly. Oddly, when we were kids, we used to joke that he'd grow up to be the creepy guy at a bar slipping drugs into people's beer. Turns out, our joke became reality. 9. My ex-boyfriend, whose name I don't want to mention, showered me with attention and flowers, but it made me uneasy. I ignored my instincts because co-workers said I was lucky to be pampered. When we moved in together, he isolated me from everyone, then started beating me brutally, even trying to kill me multiple times. Escaping wasn't easy, so I learned to endure. Then an opportunity came. I kicked him out, convinced the landlord to rewrite the lease in my name only. A job offer came out of nowhere, letting me send my kids there during school breaks. Strangely, I hadn't applied for it, and they didn't know how they got my contact info. but that job literally saved my life. 10. When I was about 14, my grandmother and I were walking our dog in an empty park in November at 9 p.m. When it was very dark, a strange man approached, instantly making me uneasy, and I knew something was wrong. He started circling us. When we got back to the car, I got in first, and my grandmother was at the back. We thought he was gone, but he wasn't. He rushed over and violently attacked her right in front of me. The lesson: if you have a bad feeling, listen to it and leave immediately. Don't waste time doing anything else, like putting the dog in the back. Just get it in the front seat with you. That could save your life. 11. When I was 17-19, I worked at a pizza shop in the neighborhood. There was a tall, lanky guy with braided hair who'd show up late at night. Sometimes not even buying anything. That was odd, but the way he stared at me, standing outside the door or sitting in the shop, watching intently, gave me chills. Things were fine until one night I was alone in the shop because my co-worker skipped out, was delivering, or was out back smoking. Suddenly, the guy appeared at the door, grinning like he'd caught me. He pushed the door open, walked to the counter, leaned close to my face, and said, "I'm gonna sleep with you." I backed away, stunned. But he kept going, saying he'd been watching me, that I shouldn't pretend I didn't like it because he knew I was waiting for him. He even said, "Come on, I know you're a freaky girl." He seemed surprised and annoyed when I told him to leave or I'd call the police. He threatened me to be careful after that. I stopped walking the 15 minutes to work because the route was dark and had too many spots where someone could hide. My initial gut feeling about him was right. He was truly dangerous. 12. My sister's ex-boyfriend. He seemed nice, but deep down, I sensed something was off. I started having nightmares that he was abusing her. I'd wake up thinking, "Thank God it's just a nightmare. He'd never hurt her." Then one day, she finally told us he'd been abusing her for years. Thankfully, she's no longer with him, and he's now in prison. 13. A high school teacher made me feel uneasy, but I had no solid evidence to say anything. I asked others about him, but no one said anything bad. Later, I heard he'd been sleeping with a female student throughout her high school years. When she graduated at 18 and was pregnant, they went public with their relationship. He was 35. They married and had 3 kids. But then he was caught sleeping with a 15-year-old student and was arrested. I always felt something was off about him, but couldn't pinpoint exactly what. 14. A college professor teaching abnormal psychology, ironically, was a pedophile. He acted like he was trying to mimic a good person. But to me, he seemed cold, distant, and almost reptilian. Some others felt the same, but many were fooled by him. In a lecture on sexual preferences, he spent 5 minutes insisting that anyone who found Catholic schoolgirl outfits attractive was a sick, perverted pedophile. He kept repeating it, making me wonder, who are you trying to convince, us or yourself? Turns out, he was convincing himself. His projection was chilling. 15 years ago, in a drama class, there was a guy with anxious energy, always tapping his pen or shaking his leg. I feel a bit guilty recalling it because I don't want to judge, but he always gave me a weird vibe. I once jokingly told a classmate he seemed like the type to bring a gun to school. We both laughed, and I didn't think much of it. For our final exam, we had to write, direct, or act in short plays. My group adapted a Shakespeare play, I forget which one. Before the performance, groups rehearsed and gave feedback. His group performed, with him starring in a play he wrote. The play was about a troubled high school student, dysfunctional family, alcoholism, bullied by peers. The main character, played intensely by him, brought a gun to school, shot his bullies, teachers, and the girl he liked, then killed himself. It turned out to be a dream. I was shocked because my initial weird feeling seemed right. He was always kind to everyone, including me. And I hope he's okay now, wherever he is. 16. A new guy started at our company. Very charming, friendly, and approachable. Everyone liked him except me and another co-worker, having grown up in toxic, abusive environments. We were sensitive to certain signs, his way of talking, overly friendly demeanor, and sob stories to gain sympathy. He often talked about not seeing his daughter and badmouthed her mother. Then he suddenly quit. Turns out, he was arrested for violating a restraining order related to abusing his daughter's mother. He was a classic manipulative abuser who fooled almost everyone. Everyone was shocked. But my co-worker and I realized our instincts were right from the start. 17. I worked at an elementary school with a beloved principal. He was friendly with students and well-liked by staff. One day, I had to meet with him privately about a student. For the first time, I felt deeply uneasy being alone with him in a closed room, though I didn't know why. I chalked it up to my past trauma and pushed through the meeting. A few months later, he was fired and arrested for inappropriate behavior with young girls in public. Thankfully, no children were harmed, and as far as I know, he never hurt any students. 18 years ago, I joined a church in a southern state. Not being local, I saw the congregation as family and was active in activities. A new man joined the church, saying all the right things and acting like someone trying to better himself. But I felt something was off about him, though it seemed only I did. Turns out, he was a con artist. After weeks or months of gaining the pastor's and congregation's trust, he targeted elderly members, convincing them to invest in scam business ideas, like fake road resurfacing schemes. Luckily, his plan didn't last long. He vanished suddenly, and the damage was minimal. I felt somewhat vindicated for my intuition. 19. A few months ago, I met a guy and started talking. Right after meeting him, I felt strange loss of appetite, no interest in my usual hobbies, and constant unease. I didn't understand why, as everything in my life, work, family, personal was fine, but these feelings started exactly when I met him. He seemed like a good, genuine guy, and I kind of liked him. But a few weeks later, I realized he wasn't what I thought. The relationship ended as quickly as it began. Strangely, after we parted, everything returned to normal. I could eat, felt at ease, and regained interest in life. I'd never experienced anything like that. It's odd, but it seems my body sensed something was wrong from the start. 20. In ninth grade, I sat next to a kid in French class. I was shy, awkward, and tried to avoid attention. He was loud, rude, quick-tempered, often in trouble, but well-liked. Still, he always made me uneasy. Looking into his eyes, I sensed something was off. I remember him often coming to class late, loudly singing childish songs, and entering disruptively. The teacher would send him out or wait for him to calm down. People laughed, thinking he was just being silly. I tried to avoid his attention, but kept an eye on him, fearing he'd snap 10 years later. He made national news for allegedly strangling his girlfriend's 9-month-old baby to death. He's now on trial, claiming innocence and saying he only noticed the baby wasn't responding. But there's significant evidence against him. I absolutely don't believe him. 21. I always felt uneasy about a friend of my in-laws. He once spent all the money for his mother's funeral to buy expensive gifts for my 14-year-old sister-in-law and a neighbor girl of the same age. Because of this, his brother beat him badly. I told my then boyfriend, now husband, that I suspected he was trying to groom the girls. Years later, I saw him in a Facebook video by a predator catching group, exposed for sending explicit messages and trying to meet girls he thought were underage. 22. I worked at a community theater where the cast was close-knit. My closest castmate was head over heels for a new guy. Everyone liked him because he treated her well and had many likable traits. Only the husband of another castmate, Joe, disliked him. Joe couldn't explain why, just felt something was off. We teased Joe for being a buzzkill. 6 months later, while my friend was visiting family in Canada, the police called. Turns out, the guy had raped 6 high school students and 1 adult we knew. Horrifyingly, some assaults happened on my friend's bed. He even gave one victim my friend's t-shirt to wear. That victim escaped. When the police came to arrest him, he killed himself. My friend had to rush back from Canada, facing a mess. She was never the same. We all wondered how we missed the signs. Then someone said, Joe saw it. Remember, Joe had sensed something was wrong from the start. 23. A friend invited his co-worker to our Magic the Gathering hangout to chill with our group. When the guy showed up, I immediately felt uneasy but didn't know why. He got drunk, bragged to seem cool, and brought his new girlfriend, who was 14, while he was over 25. He also tried to pressure my sister, and when my friends intervened, he got aggressive. We had to restrain him and call the police. While being arrested, he punched an officer at his court date. He showed up with another girl who also looked very young. Worse, my friend invited him again. That's why we're no longer close. 24. When I met my 3-week-old nephew, I felt deeply uneasy and couldn't look at him. My stomach churned. My wife held him, and my brother and his girlfriend asked me to hold him, but I couldn't. The thought made me sick. I've always loved kids, so it wasn't because he was a baby. 2 weeks later, he died in a household accident. He suffocated during co-sleeping when someone accidentally rolled onto him. My nephew was only 5 weeks old. completely innocent, deep down. I felt he was going to die, but I couldn't say it. Who'd believe a gut feeling like that? 25. In college. My girlfriends and I were heading to a party. On the way, I suddenly felt awful, like I was going to puke, and sensed we shouldn't go. I tried to stay quiet, but kept seeing odd signs, like a billboard saying, "It's never too late to turn back." Finally, I said, "We're almost there, but I have a really bad feeling about this party, and I don't know why. I think we should go home." Luckily, they listened, and we turned back. That night, we learned someone brought a gun to the party and threatened to shoot everyone. He got into an argument with someone, kicking him out, and shot 2 people. My friends were both relieved and shocked by my intuition. 26. A few years ago, I dated a man. He was charming, handsome, and had a great job writing for a major newspaper. He had everything I was looking for. But I felt something was off, like he wasn't attracted to me. Still, I was surprised when he asked for a second date, knowing I was struggling financially. He offered to take me to a fancy dinner. Normally, I'd decline to avoid owing anyone, but my grandmother said he seemed nice and encouraged me to let someone treat me well. The date went smoothly, and I had some wine afterward. He said he wanted to show me kittens he'd rescued, knowing I love animals. At his place, he made me a drink, but I didn't notice he wasn't drinking and prepared it in another room. Suddenly, I felt nauseous and rushed to the bathroom. I vaguely recall stepping into the bathtub with the door closed, which felt bizarre since I'd never do that at a stranger's house. My memories after that are fragmented: him leading me to a room, pinning me down, then driving me home. I got a rape kit done, but there was no clear evidence, just some red marks on my neck, possibly from strangulation, which shocked the nurses. When I told my grandmother, she said, "I didn't tell you to go to his house." I felt naive and foolish. Now he works for a major national newspaper. When I saw him write an article supporting the Me Too movement, I was furious. Since then, I always trust my instincts and never doubt them. 27. I matched with a guy on Tinder. Within the first few messages, he asked where I lived and suggested meeting that day. I felt uneasy, blocked him immediately, and forgot about it. Years later, I read an article about him harassing and engaging in depraved behavior with a girl who was asleep. I also learned he'd stalked another woman. That guy was truly awful. 28. My high school music teacher. From the first lesson with him, I noticed his relationship with a senior girl seemed too close. I was 13, but sensed something was wrong. Over the years, I kept seeing similar behaviors, including when a female friend who transferred schools received a handwritten letter from him with actual tear stains, saying things like, "You're a huge part of my life. I don't know what I'd do without you." In my senior year, he was arrested at his home in front of his wife and 2 kids for sexually abusing students. He'd gotten away with it for so long because everyone, including the principal, was enamored with him. He was convicted and is serving a 12-month sentence, which feels like a mockery. The creepiest part is he had an after-school vocal group for juniors and seniors, which I later realized was essentially how he groomed his victims from a young age. 29. When I was about 10, a friend and her older sister babysat me. The sister, who directly watched me, had a gothic style and seemed a bit odd, but I thought it was just a phase. Years later, I read in the news that she was charged with murder. She and her lesbian partner killed a 16-year-old girl, smashing her head with a concrete block until it broke. Since the victim wasn't dead, they put a dog collar around her neck, filmed it, and committed depraved acts on her body. Looking back, I realized she clearly had serious mental issues. 30. The first time I met my father, I felt scared for no clear reason. I told my mother, and she said not to worry and to get to know him. She stayed with me for the first few days, but the unease never went away. He often tried to hug or touch me, like a normal father might. But for me, who'd never met him, it felt very uncomfortable. On the last day, my mother left me alone with him. We went to his hotel room. He went to the bathroom, leaving the door open. I thought I could wash my hands since the door wasn't closed, but saw him completely naked. He said it was fine for me to be there and told me to relax. He asked me to undress. I refused, but he undressed me anyway and raped me. Afterward, my mind seemed to block out those memories. I didn't think or recall anything about it until this year. About 10 years later, when passing that hotel triggered everything. I think I might have PTSD. I haven't told anyone except on Reddit. Anyway, my initial instinct told me to fear my father, and it turns out my instinct was right.